ओके चलें जी, आई थिंक ऑलमोस्ट एवरीबॉडी इज बैक। अच्छा मुझे एक बात बताएं, ये जो मैं आपको ब्रेक देता हूँ, डू यू गाइस गेट अप एंड टेक अ वॉक या फिर बैठे रहते हैं एक ही जगह पर? मेरा मकसद, ब्रेक देने का मकसद ये है कि आप लोग जरा उठ जाएं सीट से। आर यू लेजी लाइक मी, डोंट वांट टू गेट अप? कम ऑन टेल मी। फातिमा
Sir,
आप?
I get up.
ओके शाबाश, शाबाश, जरूर उठा करें। आपको मैं आपको बताऊं, जस्ट दिस 30 सेकेंड 1 मिनट ब्रेक एक्चुअली डज वंडर्स। मैं आपको ऑनेस्टली बताऊं, वरना एग्जॉस्ट हो जाते हैं ना, सो वी नीड टू वर्क आउट वेज इन व्हिच वी डोंट एग्जॉस्ट आवरसेल्व्स। चलें जी। All right, so let's resume. So let's go back to the question. So the question was, define osmosis and explain why osmosis is a special form of diffusion. 7 marks. Now, again, looking at the marking scheme, it says movement plus water. अच्छा, मार्किंग की ना कुछ चीज़ों को साथ साथ मैं आपको बताता जाऊंगा, जो कि आपने समझनी है. You will often find this plus sign written in the mark scheme. What this plus sign means is that everything on the left hand side of the plus and the right hand side of the plus has to be there for you to score this single mark. So, for example, if I'm just writing movement and I'm not writing with movement what is written on the right side of the plus, that's movement किस चीज की, molecules की, तो आपको ये वाला mark नहीं मिलेगा. ठीक है? So it's a movement of molecules. Well, which molecules? The second mark is water molecules. ठीक है? और फिर आप देखें कि उसने यहाँ पे अंडरलाइन किस चीज को किया हुआ है बच्चों? उसने वाटर पोटेंशियल को किया हुआ है. कैन यू सी द वर्ड concentration gradient here? Can you see the word concentration gradient? No. So that there was a reason why I said कि you should prefer, क्योंकि ये देखें, ये latest paper है, almost May June 2019 का है. The examiner is preferring, and by the way, uh, the instances in the mark scheme where you find a word underlined, do you know what that means? That no other word is acceptable. ठीक है? So that's why water potential is important. And of course, water potential की movement कहाँ से कहाँ तक है? High से low है. That's the second point. Okay, now let's see so far all what we've written. हमें उसके कितने marks मिल गए होंगे? So हमने water की movement लिखी है. मैंने molecules का word नहीं लिखा, मैंने बोल दिया था, लेकिन the word molecules is there. So molecules और movement का 1 mark है, water का दूसरा marking point है, down the water potential gradient या high to low, it's the same thing. So far I get 3 marking points. Okay, 1 plus 1 plus 1. No, actually, yes, I get 3 marking points. So let's see the rest of the mark scheme. Um, until concentrations equal either side, या slash equilibrium या slash force applied, या फिर जो मैंने आपको कल बात बताई थी, no net movement. ठीक है? यानी कि once that is done, then there is no net movement. Okay? यानी कि for example, if you have two sides, side A and B, and let's suppose this is a partially permeable membrane, अगर यहाँ पे water molecules ज़्यादा हैं और यहाँ पे कम है, तो they will go like this, eventually spacing out. Okay? Eventually वो equal हो जाएगा. So that's basically what he means. And then osmosis through a partially permeable membrane. ठीक है? तो ऊपर आप देखें कि definition तक, so यहाँ तक I am getting 4 marking points out of 7. So the rest of the marks, how do I get them? Diffusion में membrane not required and energy not required. So how many points have they written? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 points उन्होंने दिए हैं. Any of the 7 points out of these 8 points would do for you. ठीक है? इससे भी ज्यादा जरूरी मैं आपको पढ़ के दिखाना चाह रहा हूं इसकी एग्जामिनर रिपोर्ट. नाउ प्लीज फॉलो व्हाट द, ये एग्जामिनर रिपोर्ट बच्चों क्या होती है, इसको समझने की कोशिश करें. You know, when the Cambridge is done with their exams and all of the scripts have been checked all over the world, the head examiner consults all of the sub examiners, और वो हर क्वेश्चन के हर पार्ट पे कमेंट करते हैं कि पूरी दुनिया में how did the kids they attempted this part. So usually there are two things that you will find in the examiner report comments. एक तो वो कहेगा कि जो बच्चों ने बोंगी मारी वो क्या थी. न्यास, do you know what bongi is? न्यास,
No.
बच्चों बोंगी की इंग्लिश में हम क्या ट्रांसलेशन करेंगे? कैन आई टेक सम हेल्प? मेरी क्लास में सबको पता है ना बोंगी किसको कहते हैं?
Oh, I know. It means like a dumb head, I think.
Yeah, dumb head, thanks. So in the examiner report, they will either tell what the dumb heads did. I mean, of course, we should not say that to students, but I mean, in terms of answers, okay. And then they would highlight the other part of the answer, which is the better candidates. ठीक है, तो आप जब भी examiner report पढ़ें, think that you're the better candidate. Okay. चलो जी. So it says most candidates had a secure grasp of osmosis. Occasionally, reference to a partially permeable membrane was omitted, and there was some confusion with water potential and concentration. See, as I said, इसमें आपको confusion नहीं होनी चाहिए. Ideas are the same, but which term should you prefer? Water potential. This sometimes led to candidates stating that water moves against a concentration gradient. No, I mean, that's not the case how it is. Okay? So that's basically how you would answer this question. Okay? मैं सारा वो लिख नहीं रहा मार्क्सिंग दोबारा इंशाल्लाह ये मैं आपके साथ शेयर कर दूंगा वैसे भी so that should not be a problem. Okay, B part. Explain the importance of active transport in the human alimentary canal. Okay. Explain और marks कितने 3. So active transport की क्या importance है alimentary canal में? Well, we just saw that in the villi, which is in the small intestine, you know, glucose and amino acids are absorbed by active transport. Simple. Okay, which is against the concentration gradient, of course. Against the concentration gradient. Let's see what the examiner has to say. वाह जी वाह, देखें जी जरा उसने कितने पॉइंट्स दिए हमें. It's a 3-marker question and it's giving 1 2 3 4 5 6 7 marking points. इनमें से any of 3 that you write, guess what, you'll score for full marks. Okay, so absorption है, ठीक है, by villi of digested amino acids, glucose. Amino acids or glucose is the best choice of words. मैंने देखें ऊपर वही लिखी है. Although he's being very generous कि वो कार्बोहाइड्रेट को भी accept कर रहा है. फैटी एसिड्स को वैसे उसको नहीं करना चाहिए बिकॉज फैटी एसिड्स टेक्निकली लैक्टिल में होते हैं, बट अगेन ये दिस इज पार्ट ऑफ द केम्ब्रिज पीपल बीइंग वेरी जनरस नाउ. उनको होता है जितनी एज देते हैं उतनी अच्छी बात. Anyhow, mineral ions, okay, also mineral ions, they're also faster than diffusion, okay, against the concentration gradient to prevent wastage. ठीक है, prevent wastage किस चीज की? I mean, of course, we don't want the amino acids and the glucose to go down the drain, as in, you know, become the fecal matter and get digested. They need to be absorbed. That's the reason why the digestion is happening in the first place. ठीक है, तो basically जितना मैंने लिखा है वो भी it was sufficient for you to score the marks. Let's see what the examiner has to say for this. All 3 marks were often secured with references to absorption of a named nutrient by villi against the concentration gradient. ठीक है बच्चों, are you good? Come on girls, you don't speak anything. सब जरा माइक अनम्यूट करके मुझे yes तो कर दें. मतलब I mean, come on, I need to believe that I'm yes. Teaching
Yes.
alive people. Thank you Fatma, thank you. और जो बाकी हजरात हैं, ख़वातीन हैं, चलें, मतलब मर्जी आपकी. Okay, thank you, I appreciate. The others sleeping. चलें, कोई बात नहीं. Yeah. Thank you, I appreciate. चलें जी. नहीं जी, अगला क्वेश्चन है जी October November 2018. ठीक है, such a lovely question. Let's read this question carefully, बच्चों. Please pay attention. Figure 1 shows cells from a plant tissue which have been mounted on a slide with distilled water. What is distilled water? Pure water. यानी कि इसमें पानी, there's nothing except for water, and viewed using microscope. Okay, so this is a diagram in which you can see that the plant cells have been placed on a slide जिसमें सिर्फ पानी था. Okay. Oh, by the way, that reminds us of something. So if we started this yesterday, if a plant cell is placed in distilled water, eventually what will happen? It will become what? The cell will become turgid. Yes, that's what we know already. Okay, fine, fair enough. But okay, figure 2 shows cells taken from the same plant when mounted on a slide with concentrated salt solution. Oh, So now look at the appearance of the cells. Wow, they seem to be, I mean, इनकी बाउंड्री तो आप देखिए आपको नजर आ रही है, लेकिन अंदर वाली चीज बेचारी कुछ छोटी हो गई है. Well, we just studied this yesterday in a concentrated solution. What happens to a plant cell? It becomes plasmolized. शाबाश, प्लाज्मोलिसिस. तो आप देखें यहाँ पे ये जो आपको बीच में चीज पतली होती हुई नजर आ रही है. I mean, this is cytoplasm shrinking, vacuole. Of course, you can't see the nucleus and all of that stuff in detail, but I mean, you can clearly see that things are going smaller. Explain the appearance of cells in figure 2. Explain का word है, इसका मतलब आपको रीजनिंग बतानी पड़ेगी, और 4 marks. Wow. I mean, honestly, looks 4 marks, लेकिन it is very easy. So, हुआ क्या है? The water leaves the cell down its water potential gradient by osmosis through partially permeable membrane. और पहला पॉइंट मैं लिखना भूल गया, वो
ये
आपको
तो अपीयरेंस पूछ रहे हैं, प्रोसेस नहीं पूछ रहे.
ओहो, एक्सप्लेन. हाँ ना, तो ठीक है ना, यू हैव टू एक्सप्लेन द अपीयर. देखें अपीयरेंस क्यों हुई है, बिकॉज ऑफ व्हाट, बिकॉज ऑफ द ऑस्मोसिस. इजंट दैट द केस? क्या ख्याल है आप? अगर अगर यहाँ पे डिस्क्राइब होता तो फिर आप सिंपली बता देते that the size of the cytoplasm is decreasing, and you would not have answered why is it decreasing. That's exactly bachcho why we need to understand what the glossary usage is all about. ठीक है? Describe का मतलब होता है you just have to tell what you can see. Explain is the why and the how. So if we quickly go to the marking scheme, ये देखें, वो ये बता रहा है membrane of the cytoplasm, membrane or cytoplasm pulling away from the wall. The cell is plasmolized, water potential lower on the outside, osmosis is happening, water moves out of the cell through the partially permeable. ये वही पॉइंट है जो कि मैं लिख रहा था और मैं लिखने लगा था, ठीक है ना? So the first point that as I said, you have to identify the differences in the concentration gradient. Okay, so please remember this difference. इसीलिए मैंने आपको कहा है किसी भी क्वेश्चन को आंसर करने से पहले look at the glossary words first and then look at the marks and then decide what you have to write. ठीक है? So you have to, I mean, describe is what is happening and explanation is why is all of that thing happening. ठीक है? So at the end of the day अगर आप देखें तो इसने simply osmosis की explanation ही पूछी हुई थी. So if you look at the mark scheme carefully, you actually had to tell more or less the same things that I explained yesterday, including what. अब देखें यहाँ पे water out of the cells है, move कर रहा है, through partially permeable membrane है, and so on and so forth. Let me read the marks, the examiner report also. Okay, although many answers were credit worthy, a significant proportion of candidates did not realize that the question was testing their knowledge of the process of osmosis. और वो इसलिए क्योंकि वो explain पूछ रहा है. आगे वो कह रहा है these candidates often spoke of cells shrinking but were unable to explain their answers. Anika, this is exactly what you were talking about. वो आपसे description नहीं पूछ रहा. Yes, we can see it is shrinking, but it's actually why is the cell shrinking? Okay, it says further, those who knew that osmosis was involved occasionally thought that concentrated salt solution had higher water potential. I mean, I'm sure that you don't have this confusion. ठीक है बच्चों, is everybody following?
Yes.
Okay. चलें जी, अगला पार्ट देखते हैं. Identify structures P and structure Q. Okay. Q is the, हाँ जी, क्या है जी? साइटोप्लाज्म है, सेल वैक्यूल है, क्या है? What do you think? What do you think is P? Come on, I'm leaving the ball in your court. You have to tell me what that is. Yes, बच्चों, come on.
Cell membrane है sir.
देखें जो P है वो मेम्ब्रेन है और जो Q है वो साइटोप्लाज्म. P is a cell membrane क्योंकि वो डिटैच हो गई है ना. It has detached. I mean अगर आप ऊपर वाली डायग्राम में देखें, if you look at this diagram, maybe this white thingy is the cell wall, okay, and right next on the inner side is ये इस वाली side पे is the cell membrane. Okay, so but now since it has detached, so it is gone in. So that's the cell membrane and Q is the cytoplasm. Okay. All right. State the contents of location R in figure 5, figure 2. हाँ जी, ये कल मैंने आपको बात बताई थी. ये वाली जगह क्या खाली होगी, इधर हवा होगी, क्या होगा? हमने किस सॉल्यूशन में डाला है? Concentrated salt solution में डाला है. So all of this solution is going to enter this part of the cell. जहां से cytoplasm shrink. So this is the region between the cell wall now and the cell membrane because the cell membrane has shrunk. So what do you think, बच्चों, would be the answer? Which solution do you think it will? शाबाश, it will have
Salt
concentrated.
solution.
Yes, exactly. It will have concentrated salt solution. आप देखें कि उसने salt plus water या slash solution किया हुआ है. खाली water नहीं आपने लिखना because it's solution. Because as he's saying in the question, that if it shows cells, figure 2 shows cells taken from same plant tissues where on a slide, mounted on a slide with concentrated salt solution. Okay, so that has to be mentioned. Anyhow, okay, now it says the concentrations of substances in structure Q. Okay, what was structure Q? Q cytoplasm था. हम लिख लेते हैं. Cytoplasm are different from those in R. Okay, R जो है यहाँ पे अब concentrated salt solution है. आ गया है. वो कह रहा है the concentration of substances in structure Q are different from those in location R. Explain how the properties of structure P. Okay, what was structure P? It was the cell membrane. Okay. Explain how the properties of structure P results in differences in concentrations of substances Q and substances R. Hanji, 3 marks. Let's try and understand what the question is saying. You have to really understand what the question is saying. Dekhiye, let me repeat the question. Look at the question very carefully. Okay, oops, I'm sorry. Wait. Okay, the concentrations of substances in structure Q, which is the cytoplasm, are different from location in R. मैं यहाँ पर cell को redraw करता हूँ. So if that's the plasmolized state, for example. Okay, that's the nucleus, that's the pore vacuole. और structure Q जो है वो आपका ये है. ठीक है, Q cytoplasm है. बल्कि इसको मैं different ink से करता हूँ. Let's do it with the red ink. That's Q, and then this is R. Okay, and then this structure is P. Now what he's saying is, explain how the properties of structure P, which is a cell membrane, results in differences in concentration. Cell membrane, bachcho, by nature kya hai? Partially permeable membrane. And what does partially permeable membrane mean? It means it will allow only certain things to pass through it and not the others. Okay. So explain how the properties of structure P results in differences. Now, since it's a partially permeable membrane, it will only allow certain things to pass through. Therefore, Q के अंदर और जो ये जो cell wall है, since it's freely permeable, it will allow everything in the solution to move through it. So R will therefore have everything of the salt solution, whereas Q will only have few of those things since it's partially permeable membrane. Let's see what the examiner has to say. ये देखें, partially permeable है जिसका मतलब है water can pass through, and other substances, example salts वगैरह, cannot pass through. Why can the salts not pass through? I mean, I'm asking that question. Maybe because the salt molecules are too large to pass through. Too large to pass through the cell membrane. Are you following? Let's see what the examiner has to say. Answers did not always accurately relate to the question. Thus, there was often a description of osmosis rather than the description of the properties of structure. ये बहुत important बात है. Question की तरफ वापस आएं जरा. देखिए उसने किस चीज पे, again this is importance of reading the question very carefully. It said explain how the properties of structure P result in differences. So you had to explain all of the fact that it's partially permeable membrane, which means water can pass through and other things they cannot pass through. ठीक है बच्चों जी, are you with me so far? Is everybody good? Yeah.
Yes.
Alhamdulillah. चलें जी आगे चलते हैं. We've got 5 minutes left. Um, I really wanted to do this question also. चलेंगे मैं आपके लिए एक question में आपके लिए do you like homeworks? I'm sure you don't like homeworks, but this is a very old question. It's May June 2002. और ये बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन है, ये मैं आपके लिए छोड़ रहा हूँ. अभी फिलहाल मैं आपको ये जो सेकंड लास्ट क्वेश्चन है इसको हम देखते हैं बिफोर वी एंड. ओके. Again, this is October, November 2018. Explain what, okay, explain. Again, let me highlight the glossary word. Again, we need to go into reasons, okay? You have to go into reasons. Reasoning is required. Explain what is meant by each of the following terms and describe one example of each in either plant or animal. Okay. तो अब यहाँ पे देखें उसने define नहीं पूछ लिया, उसने explain पूछ लिया. So I mean literally all of what we wrote yesterday, including one example, you have to write. Let's look at the marking scheme for diffusion. देखें जी, सबसे पहले movement plus किस चीज की, particles की, molecules की या ions की, down the concentration gradient, या फिर आप इसको इस तरह भी लिख सकते हैं from high to low. See, I explained that yesterday also. Then a named molecule, like for example glucose, for example oxygen, anything can be possible. ठीक है. और फोर्थ मार्किंग पॉइंट वो कह रहा है only 0.3 awarded, यानी कि एग्जाम्पल की एक्सटेंशन है बेसिकली. यहाँ पे उसने फॉर एग्जाम्पल ऑक्सीजन, कार्बन डाइऑक्साइड एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट स्टफ. ठीक है. लेट्स सी व्हाट द एग्जामिनर हैज टू से फॉर diffusion. Many candidates gained full credit for a correct explanation of the term diffusion and a correct description of an example. Candidates did not always provide an example. When they did, it was not always relevant to the questions. Okay? Examples not in either animal or plant as required by the question. यानी कि परफ्यूम एक साइड पे स्प्रे कर दिया और वो स्प्रेड कर गया. यस, दैट्स एन एग्जांपल ऑफ डिफ्यूजन. लेकिन अगर आप क्वेश्चन को देखें, उसने क्वेश्चन में क्या कहा है? वन एग्जांपल ऑफ ईच इन आइदर प्लांट और एन एनिमल. सो अ पोटेशियम परमैंगनेट क्रिस्टल इन वाटर, yes, it's an example of diffusion, लेकिन it is not an example of diffusion in either plants or animals. Okay, so active transport. चलें जी, active transport के लिए देखते हैं मार्क्स स्कीम में कितने पॉइंट्स लिखे हुए हैं. So it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 points. Wow, let's see what these are. Okay, again, it's a movement of, यहाँ पे he's been generous, particles, movement, ions, everything, anything is acceptable against the concentration gradient. या फिर आप इसको low to high भी लिख सकते हैं. Energy is required. See, they've underlined the word energy. That means it has to be there. And it is coming from which process? Respiration. उसको भी उन्होंने underline किया हुआ है. Membrane is required and then named molecule. अभी हमने example देखी है, either glucose into the villi or nitrate ions into the root hair cells. ठीक है बच्चों, I hope this is fairly simple. Everybody? I mean, this is exactly what we did yesterday. इसकी भी देखते हैं जरा examiner report क्या है. Many candidates gained credit for correct explanation of the term active transport. A considerable number of candidates contradicted their correct explanation of concentration gradient here. For example, by stating correctly from low to high, but then going on to say down a concentration gradient. Active transport में down concentration gradient है कि कौन सा word है बच्चों? Come on, quickly tell me. It's against. Shabash, it's against the concentration gradient. Okay. Candidates were often unable to fully describe correct example with reference to unnamed mineral ions. Unnamed mineral ions को mark क्यों नहीं मिला? क्योंकि उसने question में क्या कहा हुआ था? One example. So you have to take a name of an example like glucose or amino acid in villi या फिर nitrate ions in case of plant cells. Okay. And then the B part is starch is a carbohydrate stored in plant cells. Explain why starch is more suitable storage substance than glucose. अच्छा जी, ये बी वाला पार्ट और ये अगला पार्ट, पूरा क्वेश्चन बच्चों, मार्क्स स्कीम वैसे दी हुई है नीचे साथ, लेकिन आप कोशिश कीजिएगा, ट्राई दिस क्वेश्चन, आई मीन दिस इज रियली एन इंटरेस्टिंग क्वेश्चन। इसके ऊपर वैसे तो इस ग्रिड के ऊपर आपने ड्रॉ करना है, लेकिन अगर आपके पास ये सॉफ्ट कॉपी में है तो इसको अपनी कॉपी पे रीड्रॉ करके दोबारा करके देखिएगा, और यू हैव टू सेंड मी अ स्नैपशॉट ऑफ दिस एज होमवर्क। कम ऑन, सो गिव योरसेल्फ अ डेडलाइन। एक दिन काफी है या फिर बहुत ज्यादा होमवर्क नहीं दे रहा है? क्या बात है बच्चों, कम ऑन टेल मी, हाउ मेनी डेज डू यू थिंक आई शुड गिव यू फॉर दिस होमवर्क? कम ऑन टेल मी।
Till the next class.
बिफोर द नेक्स्ट क्लास, वो फिर आप लोग
Yeah.
प्रोक्रेस्टिनेट कर लेंगे बहुत ज्यादा ओवर द वीकेंड। व्हाट डू यू से? I think Sunday is a good deadline. I will give you a reminder on Friday and then also on Saturday. It's come on, it's just one question. I mean, it's easy, okay? And if you do it earlier, I mean, I will be the happiest guy. All right. Any questions, Bachu, you have for today?
No.
No, sir.
Chale ji. I hope you enjoyed doing the exam style questions. All of what we discussed was really important. Please make sure that you revise all of this. Inshallah, in our
सर
next class.
मेरा एक क्वेश्चन था।
जी जी बच्चे पूछें।
सर हमारी टीचर ने हमें हाइपरटोनिक आइसोटोनिक करके सिखाया था, तो वो जरूरी है कि नहीं?
Did you see any discussion about these words in either the papers or the mark scheme or the exam report?
नहीं सर।
Then the answer is very clear. You don't need to go into those terms. If you know them, it's good for you, but guess what? That is not required at your level. So inshallah, you don't need to worry about that. आपके सामने है, हमने आज बड़ी डिटेल में मार्किंग स्कीम्स भी देखी हैं, एग्जाम रिपोर्ट्स भी देखी हैं. Never ever in the mark scheme or exam report you find all of these words. So don't get over concerned with stuff that you don't need to know. Okay? चलें जी, थैंक यू बच्चों। इंशाल्लाह अब आपको मंडे को मुलाकात होती है, मैं आपको होमवर्क का रिमाइंडर दे दूंगा। I thank you all. Inshallah, see you on Monday. अपना बहुत ख्याल रखिए। अस्सलाम वालेकुम।